haven't done this in so long in person, so forgive me if, I'm a little nervous, just to be honest, So I like to always start these because obviously health and wellness is a huge deal for me. So if you would like to join me, just taking a really deep breath and a really long exhale, that will help all of us just kind of ground the space energetically. So, ready? On the count of 3, we're all going to breathe in as much as you can, and then we're going to breathe out as much as you can. And then we'll start. Cool? Sound good? All right. 3, 2, 1. Breathe in. All right, breathe out. All right, back to normal breath. Cool. Now I'm in. All right. So thank you so much, DJ, for the introduction. Obviously, if y'all have questions, we'll save that for the end. But I want to start with a few fun facts because that's something that y'all do here at Europe. I work here, so that was always my favorite part, right? So a few fun facts. Yes, from New York City, from Brooklyn, specifically Coney Island. That's that picture right there. I grew up two blocks from the beach. So summers were always spent on the beach with my family. It doesn't look the same as it used to. I would say if you want to learn more about Coney Island, because it is kind of a very famous place, the rides and everything like that, there's a few movies that have been released in Coney Island. He Got Game is one of them, and there's like 2 others that I have in my notes, but we can come back to that later. I'm a book nerd. I don't know if that was mentioned, but I love to read. I have 2 books in my bag right now. I just finished one this morning. And after this, I'll be having lunch with my partner. And after that, I'll be going to sit in the cafe and read some more. So I'm constantly reading across all kinds of genres, mostly nonfiction. But I'm always reading about psychology, philosophy. If you think about it, if it deals with the mind, health, and wellness, I'm reading it or I have read it. Finally, I'm a fitness enthusiast. I do everything, yoga, weightlifting, I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I do it all. I love to run, I love to walk. As you can see, I did the Joshua Tree Half Marathon a few months ago. That's my little pupper, Copper. That's my partner who came and supported me during that race. It was not easy to run through sand for 13.1 miles, but highly recommend it, but I was in pain for about 2 weeks. That was fun. And I really did any training for that race. So I was just like, I'll just do it. So Mike is gonna join me next time because I know he's a big time runner too. And then lastly, I was a Europe alumni, so I did the program in about 2013. I always forget. It's either 2013 or 2014 in New York City. I did the finance track, which I don't even think exists anymore. Mike, does it still exist? No. So I did a finance track back then up in New York, and I actually interned at American Express during my time. And I'm ex-staff. As mentioned, I was a recruitment specialist in New York. Moved out here. I was the Carlos before Carlos here. Mike was my manager. And then I got promoted to become a recruiter for Europe and hire folks like Mike and Carlos and all those people before I exited and went into the tech space. But we'll get into that later. Now, I know recently y'all had the theme of the week was trust, right? Build trust, be honest.
Yeah.
Yes. We're going to talk about trust today because I'm a big fan, and I've had my own issues with trust, but also I've recovered from those issues with trust, right? And right here, right now, I'm trying to build trust with every single one of you today, right? As I'm doing this, as you're looking, you looked at me, for me online, you did your research, whatever the case may be on LinkedIn, you clicked some of my links probably, but I'm still here building the trust. But I want to start with one thing. And one of my favorite authors, quotes, people, I always say, is this quote was him or was it someone else? Because you can never trust the internet. But Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, trust thyself. Every heart vibrates to that iron string. And when it comes to trust, it starts with yourself, right? I need to learn how to trust myself first before I can go out there and start trust. You can't trust people blindly, and at the same time, you want to trust people, it's a slow build. And everyone's their own individual when it comes to trust. You gotta respect that. But one of the things that I've learned through lots of therapy, lots of trauma work, lots of all of that, and through my own work and career, has been like, oh, I need to trust myself first. I need to make sure that whenever I say something that I'm going to do, what am I going to do? I'm going to do it. The less I tend to go against my word, because your word is everything. It's in the Bible, it's in everything you can do. If I don't have that, I'm not going to be able to live my true, authentic self. Now, in order to gain that trust, I always say you have to start with small habits. Who in the morning wakes up and goes straight to their phone? Maybe you scroll on TikTok, you scroll in, you check an email, I don't know, whatever you do, you immediately pick up your phone after your alarm goes off, and you're like, I'm scrolling, right? Now, if I tell myself, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to give myself time to wake up, go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, do all that, right? If I continuously keep picking up my phone, I'm losing trust within myself, because I'm like, I'm not reliable. And in the workplace, one of your greatest skills is to be reliable. People want to be able to count on you, right? So, every little step that we take, everything we say, when we say yes when we want to say no, we're losing trust within ourselves, right? I was a very much a yes person. I never said no. I was like, yes, I'm going to do that. Yes, 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 yes. Let's make all these plans. And then the plans will come and I'm like, I just want to stay home. I'm tired. How many of us have done that? Yeah. Almost every hand goes up, right? And within those moments where you say yes and you're not saying no enough, we continue to lose that, right? So in order for you to build trust within, you have to make sure that you become reliable to yourself. If I say I'm going to go to the gym tomorrow, I'm going to go to the gym. If I miss that, I'm in the negative. So think of it like that. Am I in the negative or am I in the positive state of trusting myself? You won't be perfect. We're not perfect, we're human, right? Our minds plays tricks on us. They'll come up with all these stories. I can't go to the gym. My arm hurts, my shoulder hurts, I'm tired, I slept 4 hours, right? All these excuses we tend to make. But hey, all you gotta do is show up. If you show up, you build more trust. And as you continue to do that, it continues to happen. Now, as you continue to do that, I always say the circle of trust starts with you, and then it reverberates into other people, right? I like to say, Ernest Hemingway, another great author, the best way to find out if you can trust someone is to trust them. As simple as that. But again, a lot of us have a different level of how much we can trust. I trust slowly, not right away, unfortunately. And that's through my own, I've been conned before. I'll just tell you a quick story. I've been conned. So one day I was like living on the high life, right? I ended up going to a seminar. It was like one of those self-development seminars. I'm super excited. I'm coming off the train. Still when I lived in Coney Island, I was young. I was like 19. I was working a minimum wage job, whatever. I was still in college. And a guy like had his car and he was like, hey, excuse me. I need gas to get home. He was really nice, right? I need gas to get home. Can you help me? Can you spare 20 bucks? I'm working a minimum wage job. You think I have 20 bucks to spare? No, but I was like, you know what? I'm in a good mood. I feel good. I'm in this positive light. Give him the 20 bucks. Wait, actually, let's go to the gas station together. I jump in his car, go to the gas station, pay the 20 bucks for him to get gas. He's like, I'm gonna pay you back with interest. Like, I'm gonna give you 40 bucks. Let's exchange numbers. And we go from there. Calls me the next morning. He's like, hey, I got your money. Just come downstairs. I didn't tell him my address. Luckily, I was smart enough not to do that. But I told him a corner of my block. So he comes, he gives me the money, and he actually drives me to my job at the time. I worked at AT&T. Unfortunately, he starts to call and it's like, hey, you want to be part of this deal? If you give me some money, I can double it for you, blah, 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 blah. Started believing in him. I take out money from my credit card, actually. You could do that, but it's insane interest rates. I take out about $1,000, gives it to him. I don't know why. I was in this positive light. $1,000 that I don't have. I end up giving it to him. He's like, I'm gonna get you your money back in 2 days. That doesn't happen. He ends up calling, asking for more money. But luckily, I caught it in time. I ended up talking to a friend of mine, and he's like, dude, that is, you're totally being conned right now. This is not, you can't let this happen anymore. And like something switched, and I was like, blocked the number, did all that, but I lost $1,000 and $1,020 in total, right? Because of this con. After that con, I never trusted anyone again. Any new person that came to me, I had this like, no, I can't. Like, what are they trying to get from me? What do they want from me? It took me years to build that trust again, right? So I stopped trusting myself first, right? Because I was like, you made a bad decision, you're so stupid, right? I started having these negative thoughts. And that didn't lead to anywhere, you know? It became very difficult at work to trust people. When people said they were gonna do something for me, I'd be like, huh, yeah, right. You know, I'm gonna have to end up doing it anyway. They're gonna make a mistake, they're gonna do this. I started thinking very negative of my teammates at the time at AT&T. And that lasted for years. Years it took me to rebuild that trust. So, you know, after reading many books, doing a lot of therapy, doing all those things, I started to be like, hey, you can trust people right away. But there's, you know, a certain percentage. I can give you 50, and then you build the rest. I'm gonna trust you 50%, I'm gonna meet you halfway, but you have to meet me halfway. And that's how I started to build from there. Never 100% at once, but hey, let's meet each other halfway, right? So, as mentioned, trust can take years to build, which it did for me, and only seconds to destroy. That's all it took. A few days and it was gone. And this can happen in the workplace, right? Someone says they're gonna do something for you, a big project, you're part of the team, and the next thing you know, they're gonna do it, and you gotta pull your own weight. This might happen, it's gonna happen. Expect it to happen, actually, right? But it's like, hey, what Europe does well, Mike and team, is a feedback mechanism. Provide feedback to that person. Make sure they don't do it again. And if they do it again, provide feedback again. Oh, they do it again. Okay, let's talk to other people. Is this something similar happening across, you know, is this person doing that to everyone? Where they say they're gonna do something and they don't end up doing it, right? What's going on in their work life? What's going on in their personal life? We have to be empathetic to other people, right? But at the end of the day, all of us have a certain amount of space we're willing to tolerate when it comes to trust before it becomes, you know, shambles, right? This is why, you know, in personal relationships, you know, couples, cheating is like one of the biggest blow-ups that can happen, right? Because you broke a person's trust. You trusted, I'm gonna be monogamous, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna be only with you, and next thing you know, it breaks. There's a lot of stories out there. Esther Perel has 2 great books about that if you're curious. Trust is a muscle that must be exercised daily, every day. It's like, I gotta put that little bit of trust. I gotta do those small little things so that I can begin to trust myself, and in turn, that's gonna help me build an intuition for other people. So you know, I can trust this person, or maybe I need to scale back and just watch and observe a little bit, right? And like I said, trust looks different for everyone. You can't expect someone to trust you right away. Some people have their own, and I learned this, again, through therapy and all these things. I learned that some people just take a longer time, some people do it too fast, and I have to be like, hey, I know you're there with that trust, but hey, don't trust me, because sometimes I'm in a moment, I'm in a season where I don't even trust myself. I need to work on myself first, right? I would say, I mean, my greatest mentor said, the hardest person to work with is yourself. The hardest person to coach is yourself, right? Because again, our brains tend to play all these games and tricks on us. And, you know, I talk about this, and it sounds very personal, but it bleeds into work. Because when we go into work, right, do you want to just be a fake person all the time? No, you want to show up, you want to be like, this is Ruben showing up as Ruben to work. This is not Ruben showing up as Robert at work. You know, switching a person in my head. Obviously, there are ways that we have to be at work. There's professionalism. I mean, all of you look amazing. Y'all all dressed great. I'm not, but you know, that's fine. I came in, I was just like, ooh, this is tough. Like, I didn't dress that way. But it's fine. I look like I just came back from Florida or something. So that's just trust in a nutshell. And through that building of trust, it becomes much easier to be honest. Just like build trust, be honest, right? But that takes time. And be patient with yourself when it comes to that, because like I said, trust looks different for everyone, right? So keep that in mind as you continue on. one of the biggest things I learned 6 years ago, I was part of this emotional intelligence training. I did this emotional intelligence training for 6 months. It was a 6-month in-depth training. I was going from New York to Philly every weekend to get this training to become, I do health and wellness, but more importantly, it's emotional intelligence, leadership development, things like that. I wanted to get really good at it. So I did that for 6 months. And one of the coaches at the time, Chris, he told me one day a simple line: trust the process. I was going through a really tough time. I had just gotten back from China. I taught English for a little stint for a year in China. And I came back, no job. I was living in my aunt's basement. And I was afraid of where life was going. I had no idea what to do. I was like, what am I gonna do in my life? I had no purpose. I was super depressed, all these things. And he took me to the side one day, and he was just like, listen, trust the process. You're going to be okay. That was the first time anyone has ever said that to me. I was 26 years old. I was like, this is the first time I'm hearing this? You know? But with that, I started to trust the process and just surrender. There's a great book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, I think his name is. And it's all about this. He basically experimented with, like, I'm gonna surrender to when life throws at me for a whole entire year and see what happens. He wrote a book about it. And it's beautiful. Like, I don't know if you believe in spirituality or like things happen for a reason and all that stuff, but that is literally, it's a magical book on how his life just unfolded for him throughout that year of just trust, right? He wasn't trying to do anything, do all these things and like control. He just said, you know what? I'm gonna step back. I'm gonna say yes when I want to, and I'm gonna say no when I need to. I'm gonna trust the process. And I did that when I was unemployed, and I ended up getting a job at Year Up. I got lucky, right? I met the people. It's not because I was an alumni that I got the job. I really like showed up. I really trained for that interview process. And I was just, whatever happens, happens. I was not expecting to get the job. I was like, I might not get it, and I have to be okay with that. I have to be okay with the fact that I'm not gonna get it, you know? I'm a control freak, so it's really hard for me to do, okay? How many of y'all control freaks? Oh yeah, that's feels right? I feel your pain. But unfortunately, life is not that way, unfortunately. I always say, I try to think back to what the same mentor, same coach taught me, was, hey, you're on a planet that's spinning hundreds of miles an hour around a big ball of fire. You can't control that. You're not controlling that. At any minute, it could just drop. And then everything ends. And that's it. Right? We won't even know. So I started to trust the process during that time, got the job, and continued to just, every time I was going through a hard time, recruitment specialist was a really tough job in New York City, traveling through 5 boroughs, doing presentations all the time. I was doing this all the time, every day, telling people about Year Up, trying to recruit students like yourself, right, to be part of the program. It was tough. So many rejections. Jesus, so many rejections. It was probably the best time, because when you work through a lot of rejection, anyone in sales? Sales? No? I always say, if you want to become strong within and be able to deal with just life, just work a sales job. Get rejected a lot. Get the training. And once you get rejected a lot, you'll be like, you say no, I'm just going to laugh, because it's just, I go on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and you continue to do that. So, you know, through this process, I was able to come. Thank you, Mike, for interviewing me and accepting me to be your program manager during that time, and doing this for 2 years. And trusting the process again brought me to my next role, which brought me to my next role. And even right now, just being a talent consultant, that all happened because I got laid off from my last job. You know, layoffs are happening everywhere. But I was like, I'm not gonna, you know, wallow in despair because I got laid off for the first time. I'm just gonna trust the process and see where that leads me. And that eventually led me to someone saying, hey, our company needs some support for our new company, because co-op is relatively new, and we need someone to build our entire talent system, work with the talent team to help with our recruitment process, yada, yada, yada. And that led me to where I'm at today, through just saying, okay, universe, okay, God, whatever you believe in, I'm putting my hands up, and I'm allowing you to take over from here. And that's what I've been doing, and I continue to do. And you're gonna have a lot of moments like that at Year Up. It's gonna be a lot of moments you're gonna be like, I don't want to do this no more. This sucks. This is too much work. There's going to be so many moments like that for so many of you. Right? This is your third week? Yeah. Fifth week, sorry. Fifth week. Ooh. You're still like in the what's it called? In the relationship? The honeymoon phase. So you're still in the honeymoon phase, but as you get to the middle, as you get to like week 13, 14, and you keep going, it's gonna get hard. And then what you do, tell yourself this, that's the process. Trust your people, trust all your coaches. They have your back, right? They want what's best for you. Even though their feedback might suck sometimes, you might be like, oh, like I didn't really want to hear that. But again, they've been doing this for years. You got some veterans here, so you're in good hands, right? So that's what I gotta say about that. Okay. So I hope I didn't take too much time. I did want to leave a lot of time for Q&A, because I think that's the best part of this. I want to answer all your questions, or as many as I can get to. So I'm going to leave it here for now, before I share my stuff. And Mike, am I good to go into Q&A? Yes, sir. All right. So, what questions y'all have for me? Hand it back, please. What's your name and your question?
My name is Salwa, and you called, when I was here, you were talking about a book called Surrender by Michael, and I didn't get that last name.
The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Of course.
Hi, my name is Sia. I'm part of the She series, and as a talent acquisitioner, what's something that a candidate can do to stand out?
Yes, I would say a few things that there's probably myths out there, like reach out to the recruiter. You get hundreds of messages a day, so don't do that because the messages just be lost. But if you really want to stand out, people love to talk about themselves, right? So when you're talking to a recruiter, yeah, obviously have your questions about the job, about the role, about the hiring manager, the team, all those nice questions. But a simple question was like, why did you start working here? What do you like about the company? Make them talk about themselves. I think that helps a lot and pretty much gives you a little bit of power, because they'll use your name and the hiring manager when you talk to them every week. So just ask them questions about themselves, make them talk more than you talk. I always say the 80-20 rule, right? 80-20, have them talk 80% of the time, you talk 20% at a time. So it's good to practice your typical questions like, I like to ask, what's your story? It's the same question as like, give me a career journey, your career journey and your career history. Like if you can say that in 5 sentences or less, which you'll learn here at Year Up, that's solid, because again, 80-20. And then if you can follow up with a question, they love that, because it shows you're curious, it shows you want the job. So, some quick tips. That's all I have over here. I didn't want to ignore you.
What have you been doing right now? There's anything you hold the whole process?
Journaling. I've been on and off for a long time. And about 2 weeks ago, I spoke to my coach. I'm a coach right now, spirituality coach, because I need to work on some stuff. And she was like, hey, you need to meet yourself. I also am using a book called How to Meet Yourself by Dr. Nicole LePera, I think her name is. If you search it, you'll see. But journaling has been monumental. Like sometimes I'm writing 1 page, 3 pages. I'm just letting the pen go, and I'm not even paying attention. I'm just letting it go. But it's been helpful for me during this time of like, I call it time of transition. Like being a consultant is great, it's cool. I'm like, I don't want to do this forever, right? So it's like, oh, I'm moving to my next stage in my life. There's an evolution happening. And my coach has helped me a lot through that. But journaling has been nice. Highly recommend it if you're not doing it already. So you
My name is Cindy. I was going to ask, what type of advanced tracking systems have you learned to use, and how many people you typically get in a pipeline?
Yeah, that's always dependent on the role. Tracking system I just use our regular ATS. It's called Greenhouse. If you want to search it, you're probably familiar with it. Greenhouse is amazing because you can build pipelines, you can build like talent pools and things like that. When it comes to how many people I'm getting in a role, if it's an entry-level role, you're always going to get a lot because there's more entry-level people available than higher. If I'm working on a VP role, I may get a few dozen, if I'm lucky. You know, you get people who are like, I'm just gonna apply to it, and you're like, you have no experience. So unfortunately, you know, I have to say no, because they don't have the experience. But usually you'll get less as you go higher roles, but entry-level roles are always hundreds of applications, which is very difficult to get through. We don't always get through all of them, I would say. If you see on LinkedIn, LinkedIn lies sometimes. I have a friend that works for LinkedIn. He's like, oh, that's just a marketing gimmick, and it's like over 200 applications. Usually that's literally people just looking at the role, not actually applying. So it's just a marketing tactic that LinkedIn uses. Just a fun fact about LinkedIn. But for the most part, hundreds. So sometimes your resume doesn't even get seen, unfortunately. So don't take it hard if you get a rejection, because we usually just bulk reject once we find a good pool of candidates to go through the process. Yeah. Greenhouse is my system. Workday is another good one. So I'm gonna go with you and then you.
You mentioned sales in your presentation. What type of sales are you in?
Yeah, I used to, I've been in sales at Best Buy. So I did Best Buy sales. I did Verizon sales. I used to knock door to door. This was door before the internet, right? I used to knock door to door. I don't have it in my LinkedIn because I was very ashamed of that job. I don't know why. But I used to knock door to door to have people switch from like Time Warner and all those other cable companies to Verizon. And I also worked at AT&T as a sales consultant. So, you know, you used to come and get your phone. I used to try to upsell you on another phone or accessories or other services. So I did that for 5 years. Yeah, so sales. Recruitment's like sales. I tell you, it's just very similar. So.
Is there ever a decision that you made in your career that you regret and why?
And that's a good question. I can't say I regret it, but if I could rewind the clock and I do it differently, was leaving Europe. I left Europe because I doubled my income. I was chasing the dollars, which we all, come on. But I was in a space with Europe where I was doing okay. I wasn't bad. I was able to pay my bills. I was able to save some money. I was able to go on vacations. I had enough money to do all those things. I don't buy a lot. I'm very minimalist. I don't have a nice car, right? I don't have a lot of clothes. I'm not the one buying all this. I like to spend money on supplements. Outside of that, you know, I don't do a lot. But being at Redbubble, when they say a culture really matters, I love the culture of Europe, what we've built as an organization and what the team has created here, specifically, because I work with Mike, right? It was something I missed the entire time I was at Redbubble. Redbubble, I never felt like I connected with anyone on my team. I felt very different. I felt very outcast. Imposter syndrome was like at an all-time high while I was there. It was a really difficult place to work. And, you know, it took me a while, but, you know, 3 months later, I'm seeing it as a gift, as being laid off. It's like, God, the universe, again, going back to that, trust in the process. It's like, it was like, no, you can't be here. Because the amount of stress I was going through just because of all those feelings I was going through, I literally started getting sick. There's a great book called The Body Keeps the Score, which shows that a lot of what you go through here and emotionally starts to, if you don't pay attention to it, it starts to show up physically. So you start getting pains in your body. It's all, science proves this. Again, the book proves this. And I started to get like a lot of stomach issues. I had to go to the hospital twice while I was working there for random things. They did all these tests and they were like, you're fine. I'm like, but I feel so bad. And as soon as I left, 2 weeks later, I was back to normal. I was like, what happened while I was there? So I would say I would probably chose differently and stayed with Europe much longer than leaving. So that's probably it. I do that over. Thank you.
Yeah, you just talked about having imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah.
So what do you do in times where you have like imposter syndrome to make yourself feel like you belong and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's always when you're looking for a job. I'm just gonna tell you, the money's nice, but more importantly, is the people you're gonna work with. So when you're going through your interview, pay attention to who you're talking to, the hiring manager, the panel, so the team you'll be talking to, because usually they create a panel of people you'll probably be working with, right? Your stakeholders. So pay it close attention, ask a lot of questions, how the team works, how the company handles like things like feedback, how they handle promotions, how they handle when the company is going through a rough time, how easy do they lay people off, right? All of these are very important to understand. So please do that, because when you have a person you can go to, and I'll use an example for myself. If I ever felt that way, I'd go to Mike and just be like, here's my manager, and be like, hey, this is what I'm going through right now, this is how I feel. Or maybe I wouldn't say it like that, but I'd be like, I just feel good talking to him. If you have that person, whether that's a coach or a mentor in your organization, it's a great person to go to and be like, am I crazy, or is this what I'm going through, right? And they'll kind of be able, if they're a really good manager or a really good coach, they'll be able to kind of talk you out of it a bit. So it's more important. And again, I didn't have that at Redbubble, so I had to kind of do emotional regulation. So a lot of breathing techniques, like we just did in the beginning, where I do an inhale, exhale, and I'll do that like 7 or 8 times to regulate my nervous system, because you'd be surprised how often your nervous system is like, ah! And again, I learned that through that book, how the body keeps the score. So yeah, just find a person. If you can figure out your emotional regulation techniques, like breathing, and there's many others you can find out there. There's even times I go to my dog and I just hug him. I call him my emotional support animal sometimes, even though he's not officially, but you know. So you do all those things that can kind of help you during that time. And also know that it's not going to last forever. You and then Alicia.
If you go back to like when you started Europe, what's one thing you would have done differently or a program you would have taken?
Europe as a student or as a staff? That was a long time ago, so it's hard to remember. I wouldn't have done anything different. I was like top of the class. I was like, yeah, I didn't get any infractions. Like, like I was a really good student. I really enjoyed the people that were there, like the whole team that supported me. My coach was amazing. I still talk to her to this day. And I still have all those Euro connections because I had such a great time. There were no other programs that I would have done that I even knew of, because my friend told me about it. I was like, I never heard of this, right? Yeah, it was probably the best program at the time for me. And I don't know many others that do it better than Europe. Or at the moment, you know, that can change. Anush, and then go back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Roberto. Nice to see you again.
Yeah.
Going back to the beginning of your speech when you said you always say yes and you shouldn't. The reason why people cannot say no is if you're too young, you're way bottom. And culturally, some people are always trained not to make waves. What is the best way to say no in your opinion?
Yeah, I think when you have to say no, it's not you're saying no. They ask you something, you're like, no. You're not just saying that, right? You're saying, hey, I would love to do that for you, right? You're starting with like, I would love to do that for you, or to do that with you, or to go to that with you. Unfortunately, I have these things to take care of, or you have something that you're working on. There's a reason why you're saying no. You probably have to be home with my kids, or I have to be home because no one's here to take care of my dog. Whatever that is, that's allowing you to say no. Because you don't want to tell someone if you're having like a mental health thing, and you're like, I just choose to want to be home, maybe watch some Netflix, relax, take it easy for once, because maybe I'm doing a lot right now. And you can say that. Hey, there's a lot going on right now. I would love to do this with you. Let's do this sometime in the future. Can we talk about this later? Leave it at that, see how they respond. But usually it's like, hey, not right now, because this is what's happening. You don't have to give too many details. But just like, hey, not right now. Can we talk about doing this in the future? How does, this date work? Try to come back with a date, and they'll probably like come back with a date, and you'll go back and forth a bit. And then do that, and you'll do it when you feel better, when you're in a better place, right? So, not saying no, it's just more of like, not yet, not yet. But when you're first starting, you might have to say yes more often, just because you're still building your brand in a sense, right? But yeah, like use your no sporadically, like not often, just a few times here and there when you absolutely need to. So, okay, I hope that helps.
My question was, do you still talk to any of your like old classmates like from Europe? And if you do, who was like that you like saw, who was the most successful person in the whole year class?
During my class.
Yeah.
So it's actually a great friend of mine still to this day. His name is Danny. He was in the IT track, I was in the finance track. He actually he interned at Google, and I even visited a few times while he was there. We still talk to this day. He's in IT, still doing the same thing that he did after he left Europe, which is pretty cool. He doesn't do it with Google, but he does it with another organization. And I know I said I was like superstar type of thing, but he was probably better than me when it came to the work. Like his professor or instructor loved him, like was vouching for him. That's how he was able to get a job through making those connections. Like the most important thing you build at Europe is your connections. So like, build those up. Get that Rolodex. You're gonna get a lot of guest speakers. Connect with them. Like, see if you could, get on a call with them a few months down the road. All these things are super important. But Danny was the one to really kind of help me with the networking aspect. That was like, yeah, I know how to do all this. Like, great. He was like, hey, keep those connections. Make sure you do that. So like, he was the one to really push me on that in that way. I'm like, make sure you're connecting with people. Every time I went to Google, he knew everybody. And I was like, how do you do this? And he's like, I literally just say hi to everyone, and eventually if they're sitting, I'm like, can I join you? And I talk to them. So I started doing that myself in my internship. I was able to make those connections. So yeah, he was probably one of the best friends to have there. So your hand, and then
Hi, my name is Elaine. I actually have a question about your podcast.
Yeah.
Do you mind talking about it and how we can find it?
yeah, it's called the Ponder podcast because I am always thinking about something. I have a curious mind. Obviously, I read a billion books. So usually the podcast is around, anything philosophy, psychology. Sometimes I bring my partner on to talk relationship dynamics. We've been together for 9 years. So I think it's always important because I learned this from my coach, one of the biggest decisions you will ever make in your entire life is the person you choose to do it with. Whoever that person is, your partner, that will be the biggest financial decision you make in your life. It will be the biggest personal growth decision you make in your life, right? So we talk about like those dynamics and like how to go through it because it's probably one of the hardest things. Relationships are just complicated in general, whether that's with friends or family probably being the hardest, right? But yeah, so I talk a little bit about that. I mean, it's all linked, so if you're interested in seeing that, I bring guests on every now and again. I had my coach on a few weeks ago. I had leadership, he left Google to start his own thing. But my friend Kayvon, who lives in Costa Rica, who moved from California to start his own company in leadership development, leadership coaching. He's amazing. I love that guy. And yeah, I bring all these different guests on. He used to be with a friend of mine, and then my friend decided to go his own route, and I just took over and continued on from here. So yeah, so all linked in my LinkedIn and all that stuff. So yeah.
What advice would you give to anyone who wants to start a career in recruiting?
I always say, if you start a career in recruiting, it's because you just stumbled into it. But if you have like a sales background, it's easy to get in. Obviously, networking a lot. You might start as just a sourcer. I got lucky because Europe, right? So they were able to just throw me into recruiting, like because I was a recruitment specialist for students. I was able to kind of like, use my words to say I can do this because I did it with students and make it sound all nice and pretty. And they hired me. So again, stumbled into it. Actually was pushed into it because I wasn't going for it. I was going for a different role at Europe. And the director of the recruitment team was like, hey, we want you. You mind going through the interview process? So I was like, let's see what happens. And the rest is history. But usually you'll stumble on it, apply to a lot of like sourcing, like recruitment sourcer, like jobs like that, because that's usually your foot in the door, which you'll probably get as an intern, some of you, depending on your track. So that's a nice little step in the door. I saw that hand and
My name is Jesus. It's not a question. I want to see if you have a suggestion for me.
yeah.
I want to see if you can suggest anything to read for someone who because I try to control the things I can't control, and I'm trying to release that. I don't want because sometimes I'll be stressing about things that I have no control. So
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, definitely the surrender experiment. He also wrote another book called The Untethered Soul that can be very helpful. Sorry, I think I'm like going through my book Rolodex. I'm trying to think. I always say when it comes to, I'm forgetting the title right now. Wild at Heart is another great one. Wild at Heart. It's a book written for men, but anyone can read it, because if you have men in your life, it's very important. I'm a big advocate for men's mental health, because of the amount of suicides that exist. So it's something I'm super passionate about. So I read a ton of books on men's work and stuff like that. But Wild at Heart is a good one. It's a good book that I was like, it was my favorite book of 2022. It was called Conversations with God. I'm not very religious, but like things happen in my life where I'm like, well, there's some strange things that happen. So Conversations with God is probably one of my favorite books, and it's just the author talking to God and God talking back to him. But like the amount of wisdom in that book, like helped me to be like, oh, all these things I want to control, I have no control over. So this is totally fun. Again, trust the process, all right? So those are probably like 3 books I start, and then through those books you find more books. That's how I find my books. Like through books, I look at the reference page. Oh, these are the books they read. I'm gonna go and read this book. So, yeah.
I don't want to overload you with too many questions, but
Nah, overload me, man. Let's go.
you emphasize like health and wellness a lot. Did you start that at the beginning of Europe, or is it something you developed over time through all the jobs you went through? And also, it looks like you're in a good state of mind now. How long did that take you to work on yourself to get to that point where you have balance?
My whole life, all 33 years of it. To go through, I'm reading a book right now by Dr. Nicole, who I mentioned earlier. She has a book that's like How to Do the Work. And it's really blowing my mind as I'm reading through it, because she's talking about, she's a holistic psychologist. So she's talking about everything when it comes to therapy. It's like therapy in a book. And like obviously I always say, still go see someone, get a professional to help. But it takes your therapist to support you, but also it takes you to do the work, because they just be like, they listen to you, they might give you 1 or 2 things to work on, and like, hey, come see me next week and see how that works, right? That's usually what a coach does, anything. But it's taken me a god-awful time. Like growing up in Coney Island, and I didn't have great role models, right? And everyone says, you need mentors. You need mentors, you need mentors. My mentors were in the books because I had no one else, all right? So it took a lot of what I probably read hundreds of books on self-development, psychology, biology, because you'd be surprised how much our biology affects our psychology. So it's good to start like, hormones are a huge thing, right? So there's a great book called Dopamine Nation that talks about dopamine and how that affects us in so many ways. And it talks about social media and how that affects us, and why the depression rates for girls are going up. And Jonathan Haidt has a great book called The Coddling of the American Mind. I can go on and on. There's so many books out there that talk about this. But I always say I will never end growing. Growing is until I die. Maybe even beyond that if you believe in that, right? Like, I'm gonna be doing this for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that. So there's no end goal. I think that's exciting, because if there was an end goal, life would be pretty boring. So, yeah.
What branch of philosophy do you study?
Stoic philosophy. Every Ryan Holiday book, oh man, like I love Ryan Holiday. He's one of my favorite authors. Robert Greene is his mentor. He's one of my favorite authors. Wrote a book called Laws of Human Nature. If you want to learn about human nature and why we do the things that we do and why, humans are silly, read that book. And Sapiens, to know our, history of humans, like all of our history and how we're still living with a prehistoric brain, but we have technology that is smarter than us. It's very fascinating to do that. Be like, oh, this is why I scroll on Instagram for 2 hours a day. It's because my brain doesn't know any better. Yes.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sandro. Besides trust, is there any other challenges you face, like coming up in your career that you still deal with today? Oh, and rejection, as you mentioned in your previous career.
Which one? Sorry.
Trust and rejection, yeah.
Trust
Any
and
other challenges?
Yeah, trust, rejection. I would say empathy. It's challenging. Especially when you're a recruiter, you're dealing with so many different hiring managers and working with so many different stakeholders that sometimes they'll say things and you're just like, I have to shut my mouth because I can't say what I really want to say. So I have to do it in a very strategic way. So I have to actually sit there and think about how I want to tell them, like, oh, we have a great candidate, but now you're telling me that you want to continue searching for other candidates, but we might lose this candidate because they're interviewing in other jobs, but you have someone great. Why are you not saying yes to this person, right? Examples like that, but like trying to say that in a more empathetic way instead of a forceful manner, because, you know, especially me, I'm very like strong-headed, so I want to just bulldoze, right? So I'm like, take a step back, breathe, and let's see how we can talk through that. So like empathy would probably be the third thing, because it's very difficult to be empathetic in those moments. Yes.
How do you personally advocate for yourself in the workplace?
Ooh, that's a very fun game to play because you're threading a fine line of like doing great work, trusting that other people will speak on how great you work. You know, it's great that if I go for a new job and when I worked at Redbubble, I went to Mike as a reference, for instance. Like having good people who can talk to what you've done is super important. And just saying like, you know, when you hear, always listen for problems. There's always problems, right? People want solutions to these problems. But more often, people don't want solutions for their problems. They just like to talk about their problems. It happens in life and in the workplace. So it's like when you hear those problems and you're like, instead of being like, let me solve it for you, it's just like solve it first and come back and be like, remember you talked about this? Here you go. I thought of this, maybe this will work in being a solution for that problem that you had, that issue, you know? So if you could be that without them even knowing that you did that, you're gonna have a great advocate on your side. Just doing the work before they even ask for it. So that takes a lot of listening, active listening. I'm always taking notes, which y'all doing. Yes.
As a recruiter, what's something a candidate shouldn't do?
Ooh, I had a candidate actually like 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. Unfortunately, he was laid off twice last year. And he had a really hard time finding a new job. This was for a marketing role. I think we were looking for, it was either a graphic designer or a digital communications manager, one or the other. And he was just giving me the sob story. Just saying like how hard it was to find a job. I know that already because the market is really tough right now. How hard it was to find a job. Like he really hopes that I can send his resume to the hiring manager. Like basically telling me to do my job. And I'm like, I feel you. Like again, being empathetic. Like I understand. You've been unemployed for 10 months. It's really tough out there. He's telling me how he's gonna probably be homeless. Like yes, real stuff. And I'm like, I'm not your therapist, bro. Please go talk to someone. I'm not that person, unfortunately. And as much, and I want to help those people. Like that's my initial instinct, right? But there's part of that professional side of being like, I understand, I will do my best. Like, you have this skill set, I will send it to the hiring, which I did. I sent it to her, and she still spoke to him, but unfortunately, she went with someone else, right? So it was like, hey, like, still connect with me on LinkedIn. Maybe someone in my network is applying. So I still try to do something as a recruiter. I'm trying to be as nice as possible because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be on that side, right? So, but I would say never, no pity parties, like, unfortunately. Like, it sucks to say that, but you know, hopefully you have someone that you can go to talk to through your own problems, to someone that you trust. That's not a work person. So, yes, sir.
Sergio, speaking of layoffs, if tomorrow you were laid off, what skills or traits do you have to set you apart?
Besides, I'm sorry, I didn't get that last part.
What traits or skills do you have that set you apart?
Yes, so what's great about recruiting is you have so many skills, right? You got sales, you have marketing, you have branding. There's so many skill sets. I know how to do video editing, pretty good. I've been doing that for like 10 years now. So video editing, I can do graphic design. I use Canva though, but you know, I'm not out here using Adobe Photoshop and stuff like that, but I can make something decent, right? And then you have the emotional intelligence, the coaching. you'd be surprised how many people are looking for people who know how to coach, or at least have some certification in coaching. So if that's something you're thinking about, highly recommend. There's plenty of coaching certifications you can get, all variety. Coaching would be another one. So I have all that going for me, and I try when I'm pitching, like my story or like my career, like what I can do for a job. I'm like, yeah, I can do all this, and I can help here. Because as a recruiter, I'm selling the company and the job every day. So it's like, that's marketing, right? If I do it well, if someone sees the excitement in my voice when I'm talking, all these things, they're going to be more likely to continue on the interview process. Because even though the company is like, I hold your job, you also hold the fact that you're like, I'm a great employee and I'm gonna bring value to this company. So there's two things working. So not only are they selling you on the role, you're selling yourself to work there, but like you're meeting each other in the middle. So always remember that, like you have power when you're, a candidate. You have power. Make sure you utilize that, which is why I always say negotiate, things like that. Unfortunately, negotiations are dying because of salary transparency. It's like, you see the salaries, there's like not much you can do with negotiations. That's what's gonna happen in the future, unfortunately. I'm like in the middle with that, unfortunately, because it's like, it's great, but nothing is 100%, great, good or bad. There's always like downsides to everything. So, something to think about. Yes, sir.
My name is David. I was wondering if you have any tips on like if you possibly mess up in the workplace, you make a mistake, what are the steps you take to ensure it doesn't happen again?
Oh, that's a great question, because mistakes are bound to happen. Who's a perfectionist? Yeah, that's a perfectionist. I get that. My partner is a big perfectionist, and like through the 9 years of being with her, I've been like, it's okay. You don't have to. You can make mistakes and not like cry over it. But mistakes are bound to happen. What's most important is a great. I'm gonna keep throwing books out there. There's a great book by Jocko Willink called Extreme Ownership. That's what you do. As soon as the mistakes happen, tell the person, whoever, your manager, whoever you're working on that project with, hey, I made this mistake, this is what I did, and this is what I'm doing to rectify it. Immediately come with solutions. The mistake happened. Can't go back, can't rewind time. Great. Go back, say, hey, this is what I did. Explain what you did, but also explain, here are some of the solutions I've gone through it. Or like, this is gonna take a little bit of time. Maybe you made a mistake and it pushed the due date, due time, a little back. It's totally fine. You'll most likely get an okay, like that's fine, versus like, why did this happen? No one's gonna scream at you or anything like that. So just own it right away. Just do it as fast as possible before anyone even realizes. And if they do realize, that's okay. Still take that ownership and say what you're gonna do to work on it.
Thank you.
Announcement. Ruben will be taking 2 more questions.
2 more. 2 more. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Hitesh. My question for you would be like, since you've been in the senior talent acquisition for a while now, do you have like a goal like over the next 5 years that you have set for yourself in that same field, or is it like, I guess, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, so I'm working on getting into the talent development space. So still helping with the recruitment process, but also like the employee life cycle. And that starts from like candidate experience. What does a candidate go through when they're going through our interview process? What's the experience that they have? If we send a survey, would they give us a 5 out of 5 kind of thing, right? So it's working through that all the way through, like, here's how you do an interview process correctly, right? There's no, gone are the days that these companies used to do 10 interviews, used to come in for an 8-hour interview, like all these things, that's done. That's not coming back no time soon, right? Some companies may still want to do it, but they're not going to get a lot of candidates, unfortunately. Or they'll get candidates, but they're not going to be like high value. So it's doing all of that, the onboarding experience. So like, how does someone experience the company when they're first hired within the first 90 days? And all the way till they leave the company. No one's staying in a company 40 years now, like they used to back in the day, and retire with the same company. People are jumping every 5 to 10 years. It used to be 2 to 3 years, but because of everything happening economically right now, more people are holding on to their jobs because it's really hard out there. So that's what I want to do. I'm going to do the entire talent development cycle from start to when they leave the organization and make sure they leave with a great experience. And they talk, because that's a sales and marketing tactic. If people leave the company and they talk highly, like I talk highly about Europe all the time, you know, like people are going to more likely want to apply and work at that company. So they have more candidates in their pool. So yeah, that's my next step. Last question.
I'm Hank there. What was your reasoning for starting your podcast, and then what is your kind of like drive to keep on continuing in the process?
Yeah, I think my brain just got overloaded. So much information from the books I've read, my own personal life experience, what I've gone through. I'm like, I just want to help. How can I help people? And I think, so that's why I started, because it's like, there's so much here. I need to put it somewhere, right? So podcast helps a lot with that. And then I'm continuing because I'm continuing to rebuild, I'm continuing to learn about the world, like how people make decisions, why we make more bad decisions than good decisions, like all these things I'm learning about. I'm like, I need to put it somewhere. And that's, you know, I don't care if one person listens to it. I'm doing it more for me, to help me like get my thoughts in order, because it can be chaotic in there because so much information is swimming, you know? So that's what's keeping me going. So yeah, thank you for that question. DJ, back to you.